Hi everyone, this is Startup Bright and we're here to talk all things startups related. This is the time and place where founders explain their products and services, share their ideas, introduce their teams, and discuss problems and goals. So, hi Marten.
Hi.
Welcome to Startup Bright.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you won the last Kodo Startups pitch competition. You are from San Francisco, right?
Yes, I'm from San Francisco and came down to pitch.
Came down to pitch. Yeah. And then today, lucky for us, you were in LA as well. So we are able to do this interview. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Marten, and I come from Sweden, moved to US about 20 years ago. And for the last 25 years, I have worked in the global facilities management and food service industry. Mm-hmm. So I used to manage accounts like Hewlett-Packard worldwide, their entire real estate portfolio, and Amazon and Agilent Technologies. Okay. The last job I had, I was in charge of all the food service or food safety, mm-hmm. and operational health and safety and performance and operations improvement. And fascinating, you get to save lives every day. And it's a fun job, high stakes, because you never know if you save a life. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot measure if you saved a life at a certain point in safety. But if you provide them with the right equipment and the right tools, you can prevent accidents from happening. And it's very interesting when you come home at night and you feel that you've actually done something good and hopefully you have saved a life. And it costs quite a bit for a lot of companies, but if you save one single life, it's worth that effort. Yeah. So after 25 years in the industry, I decided to put the suit on a shelf and do something that is for everybody. So I found a lot of system flaws in food safety globally and wanted to do something different. Okay. And here I am.
Yeah, I heard the pitch of your company at Kodo, Kodo Startups, and it was really very different than the rest of the pitches that I heard. Yeah. Because we usually think about new stuff, we think about technology, advancing in technology or providing services. But food safety is kind of maybe the first time I heard anybody wants to do anything about it. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a new niche. And we get a lot of comments regarding that. Sometimes I hear investors saying that our startup is not sexy, mm-hmm. because we're not creating a new Instagram or Facebook or something like that. Yeah. But what we're actually doing is we're trying to resolve a real need. And there is a need for correcting bad food safety in the world. And so many people die every day from foodborne illnesses.
Did you have personal experience attached to what you're trying to solve here, or?
Yes.
Okay.
My previous job that I left 2 years ago, I was in charge of North America for food safety for one of the largest food service providers in the world. And we served about 10 million meals every day in 14,000 locations. Wow. And I had a 50-man staff to make sure that the next dish that we served wasn't the one that was going to break us. So we dealt with that on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And it was a 24/7 operation. So it was hospitals, government facilities, universities, schools, and private corporations, private companies and corporations. And you never knew when you would get that call that there was an outbreak. And every now and then you sat in meetings or you were in the office and you got a call saying that we have a situation. And then you have to figure out what is the situation? Mm-hmm. Where does it come from? What is the origin of it? Is it a disgruntled employee that is angry, that has placed something in the food, or do we have a challenge? And unfortunately, people die if you make mistakes. And food safety is very regulated globally, and you have to follow those regulations. But it's seen as a punitive system. So a lot of companies only do the bare minimum to get by to comply with the regulation. So I lived with this for 5 years, and if we would do something wrong, since I was in charge of all the food safety and environment, health and safety in North America, if we would have an issue, I would go to court.
Okay.
So I was responsible, my boss and I, we were responsible. So if something would go wrong, we would end up in court. And there was a recent case where the CEO of the Peanut Corporation of Americas that got over 20 years in prison for falsifying documentation and not complying with regulations.
I don't think a person would go for that job and work 5 years just because and make the good things or the right things just thinking about staying out of court. I believe you have to have passion. Otherwise, there is no way to stay, that long and be 24/7 and be responsible for, people's lives.
No.
So
no, you are correct. It's a passion of mine. My driver in life, my personal driver in life, is to help people and to see how I can make something different. May stick out sometimes in the wrong way in large global corporations because I don't have an MBA. I'm not a business person in the sense that I fit into a large global corporation, and I would like to make everything better. So as soon as I see something, I'm like, how can I improve that? So I got this last job. I was in charge of another department, and they had challenges in the safety department, and they knew I had managed large portfolios of real estate and service organizations. So they asked me if I wanted to take a stab at rebuilding it, and I did. Okay. And but you have to have a passion, because if you do it as a 9-to-5 job, you have to care about the people that are on the other end, and that's what I want to do with Phenium, our startup. I want food safety to be focused on the end consumer.
Okay.
And not on the corporation only, because it's us that suffer from bad food.
So why don't you then tell us a little bit more about your startup now? Did you just do your official pitch or whatever you want to do to just tell the rest of us about your startup?
Thank you. So to start, giving some background, and I don't know if you knew this, but every second 19 people get sick from a foodborne illness. 19 people. And every minute 4 people die.
Wow.
So every minute around the world 4 people die from a foodborne illness. And it costs $1.3 trillion to the global economy every year. And it's to large portion preventable. Mm-hmm. And so we came up with a method. We sat down and pondered, how can we stop this? How can we change and improve this? How can we disrupt the traditional food safety? And we realized, after going through my experience and doing a lot of research and working with World Health Organization, that there are 3 fundamental systemic problems with global food safety. 60% of all the foodborne illness comes from restaurants, and the other 40% is us cooking at home. It's hard to change the home cooking, but we can impact that 60%. Mm-hmm. So the challenges that there are that there are inefficient knowledge flow. To comply, you need to connect with a lot of different authorities, experts, managers, skill sets, insurance companies. And it's very cumbersome for a food service provider, restaurant, or a cruise line, as we all know, or hotels. Second problem is that it's very reactive, which means that you measure afterwards what you have done. So you cannot change what you have done at that point. So 90% of all food safety is actually done with paper and pen today. So there's a time lag. People walk around with clipboards and they fill in the information that they need to take, and then they go back to a computer. They should go back to a computer, enter the information into the computer, and then it goes off to somebody. That time span there can be anything from a few minutes to days or weeks. Mm-hmm. And if there is a foodborne illness outbreak, it's way too long time. And then the third problem that is there that we talked a little bit about before is that it has a lot of negative behavioral drivers, which is the regulation is seen as a punitive system and an expense. Mm-hmm. So everybody does it because they have to do it. Let me rephrase that. Not everybody. There are some very good companies out there as well that do it because they believe in it. Mm-hmm. But since it's seen as punitive and an expense, look at all the small restaurants around the world that don't sit on millions and millions of dollars in budgets or revenue. They cannot afford taking that extra step to improve safety. So we created Phenium, which then solves these three problems. So the first one is that it's an all-in-one food safety data platform. So we collect data and we connect the different food safety services through a very simple ecosystem and streamlined network with all the restaurants, so they get access to it. We use technology to help us with this. We provide processes and procedures that are easy to get to, so they don't have to create something or pay expensive consultants to do it. You also, through our system, can stream all the safety data directly to authorities and insurance companies and stakeholders and owners of the company or your restaurant. So they get immediate access to it. The second answer to the second problem is that we have a very proactive system. Mm-hmm. So it's automated. We use technology, blockchain technology, IoT, AI to analyze and collect all the information. So instead of walking around with paper and pen, it's now automated through devices. You have Bluetooth devices that you can check the temperature. And when you check the temperature, you get an immediate notification saying that you need to take a corrective action. You cannot serve this food at this temperature. You collect all that data, you can analyze it. When you analyze data, you learn from your problem, and then you can become better. So you constantly become better. It's also fascinating because it motivates the people that work with food safety, because they learn something new, they get the feedback right away, and they know that the food that they're serving is safe, and it streams it out to social media if you want to. So instead of having the current apps where you can check restaurants and such, where they measure the scores of how the restaurants are doing based on moods and emotions, now you can get the food safety score real time. So you know how they have behaved during the day, last week, etc., without having to look at the big sticker in the window saying that they got an A or B or C. Yeah. And when you look at those, the paper in the window, all of a sudden it says that it happened 16 months ago. A lot of things can happen in 16 months.
It's a snapshot.
It's a snapshot. Yeah. So we can stream it every 30 seconds. And that also changes the negative behavior. So we turn food safety into an asset. So you can use it for risk mitigation, brand promotion. Just look at Chipotle. Had cost them today about $8 billion, their big outbreaks. Look at Bluebell ice cream, cost them almost 2,500 employees, I think it was, and $800 million because of the outbreaks that they had. It's a staggering number. And then you have all the people in addition to that get sick. So if you use that technology and you change people's behavior in the kitchen, it's a lot of psychology. Some people are there to make money to pay for their tuition for school. They have no interest more than getting a paycheck. But if you gamify it and make it fun to do it, all of a sudden you get a natural behavior that it's actually fun to do food safety.
Okay, so let me, I'm trying to understand what exactly your startup is offering and how you solve this problem. So there is a food origination, let's say fish.
Yeah.
Restaurants and stores, they buy fish from some, fish producers. Yeah. Or maybe they go out to food market and buy fish from there.
Yeah.
So we have the food origination, and then it goes into their restaurant and eventually gets into the freezer.
Yeah.
And when there is an order, they take it out and they prepare it and then they serve it.
Yeah.
So in all this process, where is your startup? Where is your company?
The
What do
entire
you do?
process. So we can follow it from the beginning through blockchain technology. So we can control the provenance or monitor the provenance. Where does it come from? How was it delivered to the restaurant? What temperature has it been stored in the restaurant? Because you have the big walk-in freezers, etc., that you constantly have to measure through something that is called HACCP, Hazardous Analysis Critical Control Point. So you have to identify the control points where you have a risk for potential contamination. So if you have a dip in the temperature in the freezer or fridge or a spike in it, all of a sudden the fish may thaw and then it refreezes and it's not good to serve. People don't know this because they go and check it manually twice a day. We can send that signal every 30 seconds so you know how the freezer is performing. And if there is a risk that it will get too warm, you get a notification saying that you should do something about the freezer because the temperature is rising.
Okay, so I get that part, that you have an appliance with specific parameters that can keep or prepare the food in a certain way, and you can measure specific values of this, or you can measure these parameters and say it is safe.
Yeah.
But how about the food origination? I just don't understand how you can control the fish manufacturer or a fisherman going out and bringing tuna back and selling it to restaurants.
Yeah, so there we have to have partnerships. So we will have partnerships in the food safety, food service ecosystem, because we cannot be on every fishing boat and we cannot measure how the fish is caught and what water it has been and how much mercury it has in it. So we are identifying partners that we can work with, that we can recommend for our platform. That if we would like to have a fish that has lower mercury, there are some tuna fish companies now that put on their can the level of mercury. They measure every single can how much mercury there is. So we're trying to partner and provide the right suppliers and vendors and systems. So they come on board, they are on our platform, and people can get access to it without having to sit in the office for 5 hours and call around and see if they find the right fish supplier.
Right. Do you have a team with you? Can you tell us a little bit more?
I do. We have a very small team. We have bootstrapped so far, so we have put a lot of our own money into it, and then we have had a few friends and family that have invested, but we're 4 people so far. And between us, we have 30 launched apps, 3 exits, and 1 IPO.
Okay.
And the chairman of the board, Sari, she has a PhD in business, and she was just the blockchain fellow for the European Commission, advising the European Commission how to use blockchain technology, predominantly for the healthcare industry. And then also she works with the Finnish government as an advisor for the president and the prime minister in how this technology can be used. She's the chairman of the board. Then we have a business development person who comes from a broad experience with pharmaceutical industry as a head of business development. Brought him over. He lives in San Francisco. And then we have a lead developer and lead of integration who sits in Finland that has 15 years of experience with developing apps and platforms.
Nice.
And there is, as most people know, the education in Finland is very, very sophisticated. And the costs of good people in Finland versus San Francisco there's a huge difference.
Okay.
So we can pay much less but get high quality of people.
Do you have a product already?
We do. We have an MVP, so a minimal viable product that is out. We actually have 5 contracts already. And when we started to launch this, there were companies that realized that this could actually be used in other areas than food safety. So we actually have a contract with Goodyear for all their commercial tire service centers in North America. Shell gas station, they realized that they could use our tool for the inspections of gas stations and their food courts in restaurants or in the gas stations. And then we have a couple of smaller contracts up in Bay Area, and we just installed the system in a restaurant in downtown San Francisco. They wanted to test and see how it works for them because they've had problems.
Yeah, good. This is still, we're still talking food safety, not, because you mentioned Goodyear, we're not talking about tire safety. You're not pivoting. Are you pivoting for that? You're building specific application for their needs, or?
So most industries have problems with safety, environment, health and safety, and workplace safety. And our tool, when we started to build it, we started building a tool that could be applied to any kind of industry, manufacturing or service or hospitality and food safety. But we realized pretty quickly, based on great advisors, one of our advisors is the former head of field food safety for CDC and also worked for FDA. And he said, Martin, we need to focus in one area. We cannot spread ourselves
thin. That was
thin.
the question under my question, right?
Yeah.
Because if you try to cover too much, it's going to be really hard. You have to kind of focus, narrow down, go with one niche.
Exactly.
And be the hero in that niche. And eventually, if you want to go more horizontally, you can go, but you need money to do that.
Exactly. So since we have bootstrapped, we also need money. So when they came to us and said, could you help us? We said that we're focusing on food safety. And if it doesn't consume too much of our efforts, time and energy to help you and derail us from our key focus, we would love to help you. Yeah. So we signed a contract with them 2-3 months ago, and also with Shell. But our main focus now is we're talking to, I cannot mention the names unfortunately, but the two of the largest cruise lines companies in the world. And that would mean that our system would end up in 11,000 kitchens around the world. Yeah. But each ship has about 50 to 60 galleys, and they would need our system in every one of them. And then we're talking to some airlines. But what we're also doing when it comes to our marketing, because it's time consuming to go after all these. So we're partnering up with insurance companies and investors, because a lot of investors invest in new food companies and restaurants, and they look at the finance, they don't look at the risk. So we're now working with them saying that, you know what, you're putting 5 million into this new food startup. Have you thought about the risk? And 9 out of 10 times they say no. So we suggest, okay, so why don't you mandate for the company you're investing in to use the Phenium food safety system? Because it protects them and it protects your investment. So instead of us having a very heavy sales organization, we partner up with players that we realize that they are at risk if something goes wrong.
I was going to ask you, what was your marketing strategy? How are you going to market your solution? Yeah. Are you going to go after small restaurants first, or? But this is very viable and very good strategy to go after people that invest in this kind of industry, and they will need safety, just not to protect, only to protect their own money, but to make it more viable for future investments.
Exactly.
Right? Because once you become an investor that is known to cover all of their bases before they go to the next step, you become you become a person that people will be looking to invest with.
Exactly. So. No, you're absolutely right. And part of the way we do it is exactly like you're saying, because it protects everybody's interest, which is very, very important. Nobody wants to lose money, not the restaurant that is being invested in, a restaurant chain. Yeah. And the investor sometimes is a syndicate investor that has gathered money from other people. And if he loses all the money because of a food safety issue, nobody will trust him again, and he's done in the business. But so what we focus on that ecosystem, and then we focus on large companies like cruise lines, fast food chains, hospitality industry, so hotels. And then we have on the website, or will come up on the website in a few weeks, that the small restaurants that may not understand the need, and it will be too costly for us to go on and knock on every single restaurant door, that they can go to our website and find out about our tool and download it from there without having any extra sales efforts from us and time consuming for them, because it takes time.
Yeah.
And we know that if they run a one family restaurant, they don't have time to spend too much time on food safety, even though it is important for them.
Yeah, it is also timing, right? If you just opened food restaurant and let's say everything's going fine, in 5 or 10 years, if you have a case where somebody got really bad food poisoning, you may be able to cover for the legal expenses and whatever comes with that. But if it happens the first month you open your restaurant, you're dead.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah, it costs you more in claim costs than you have in revenue for an entire year. And unfortunately, this drives also bad behavior, because a lot of falsification happens. When it's done with paper and pen and you have an outbreak in your restaurant, you can go back and change that.
Hence the blockchain.
Hence the blockchain. So once you do it, you get a signal to your mobile phone saying, now you need to do this. When you have completed that task, it's protected with blockchain and goes back to the platform and straight into the analysis. I read a study yesterday about LA that, I think it was 2016, there were 19,700 plus restaurants that failed with food safety.
Out of,
I think it was 28,000 restaurants.
Okay, wow, that's...
So it's a significant portion of the restaurants that have failed. And then the main causes are hot and cold holding. So when you cook food, you have to keep it on a certain temperature if you have it in a buffet serving bay or something like that. Or if you cook it in the morning to then reheat it in the evening, you have to cool it down at a certain pace and a certain temperature. That was the biggest one. There were 12,000 of those that had failed. And then the second one was cleanliness. So surfaces in kitchens were not clean, and I can't remember how many that. And then the third one, which we also can help with, is rodents. So rodent infestation. I think there were 9,000 restaurants in LA that were dinged on having rodents and bug infestations in the kitchens. And these are restaurants that we go and eat at every day.
And rodents are here to stay, right? So
it can be, if you follow a good protocol, it can easily be prevented. So we also on our platform have pest control companies that can work, and when you then, instead of calling around to see who is best, you go there, you get a pest control company, and when it's done, they can send the completion straight to the authority saying, I have been there, I have inspected it, they're clear. So it's very easy, but it's very cumbersome for the companies to do it. I worked in London for a couple of years, and the head of food safety that I work with, he said, if you go to Manchester, and this is many, many years ago, and it has changed, so people shouldn't be scared of Manchester, but he said, if you go to Manchester and you go out and eat, demand that you get to go into the kitchen and see the kitchen before you go and sit down and eat. I was young, new in the industry, embarrassed, I didn't do it. 6 weeks, I got food poisoned 4 times.
Oh my God.
So I'm one of the people that I look extra, and sometimes my kids and my wife, they look at me and like, can we just eat?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm trying to keep you safe.
Yeah.
I'm holding back on a lot of things that I see, because I know it's not that big of a risk. But it's in any profession you have. You know, if you're a lawyer, you see legal issues, and if you're a banker, you know, money issues. Okay. I work with safety.
You mentioned that you were looking for investment and pitching in front of investors. In fact, you mentioned that after this interview, you're gonna go and pitch to an investor.
Yes.
And so can you share with us what you're looking for and what kind of discount you offer to your investors?
Yeah, so right now we have opened a seed round a few weeks ago. We're asking for $1.2 million, and it will be used for strengthening our market presence, and developers, help desk and support staff, and also some business development. We have already gotten a few checks in of that, and we're talking to some big, I think I'm talking to 22 different investors right now.
Okay.
And there are some that have offered, some of them have offered more based on us showing more traction. And some of them, like the one I will talk to right after this, is interested in going with a couple of 100,000 right away if he's happy with what we're doing right now.
Okay, good luck.
So thank you, yeah. So we then, the larger amount they're willing to go in with, of course we're willing to discuss with them what this means in equity in the company as well. And we're looking for smart money. In the beginning with friends and family, you get money which you need to continue, but you need smart money where people have a network and can help you, connecting you with other potential clients or investors when you come to the next round.
Okay, sounds good. I would like to follow up with you next, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and see how you developed and if you have succeeded with your goal. 1.2 million is not a small goal.
No.
And see where your startup is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It was privilege talking to you, Martin, and I hope see you again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.